So we picked up this wonderful book about Mary Blair and her art.
We did.
And it is page after page of her concept paintings for classic Disney movies, shorts, and attractions.
And they're beautiful.
Yeah, deceptively simple. They managed to tell a story, set a mood, and capture that vintage Disney magic. And most of these are done in gouache.
Yeah.
Which inspired me to try gouache for the very first time. And with the Haunted Mansion movie coming out this week, I figured I'd try painting some classic Disney ghosts in gouache.
So, once again, you have no idea what you're doing.
Not a clue. But I did zip through some process videos on YouTube by people who know much more about gouache than I do. And my first goal was to create a smooth gradient blend.
We saw a lot of that sort of thing in the Mary Blair book.
Exactly. So it's a good starting point. I should mention, by the way, there are different types of gouache and they behave slightly differently. So I'm using acrylic gouache. I'll note my materials in the info. Also, while you can use gouache similar to watercolor, diluting with water, getting subtle thin washes, I'm going to try to use it in the way some of these other YouTube tutorials suggested, and maybe how Mary Blair might have. And that is to load the brush with just enough water to get the paint going, to get it moving, and mix it to a creamy consistency.
Creamy consistency.
Yeah, not so thick as acrylics feel, and not as thin as watercolor.
Okay.
And it did feel kind of creamy as I was brushing it onto the paper.
Okay.
I mixed the colors in the palette and on the paper. The consistency of the gouache allows you to blend it on the paper for a little bit, and I took advantage of that.
All right, well, that's looking pretty good.
Well, for a first try, it's not bad. But like any foolish mortal at the gates of the Haunted Mansion graveyard, let's jump right in and see about some ghosts.
The pop-up ghost. You see these guys jump up from behind headstones in the graveyard, and I think random objects up in the attic of the Haunted Mansion.
Yeah, they're fun. And a lot of the Haunted Mansion artwork has this eerie mood to it.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with the color choices. So again, I started with a gradient. But this time I used a peacock blue, mixed in some yellow and some white, and I got this weird sort of eerie green gradient that feels like the background colors from some of the portraits hanging in the mansion.
Oh, yeah.
I'm also trying to keep it simple, kind of the way Mary Blair did her concept paintings. Simple silhouettes to represent objects in the distance. Even the foreground elements, like this headstone, it's really just a simple shape in a desaturated brown to bounce off that green.
What are you doing here?
Oh, that's something else that we saw in the Mary Blair book.
Okay.
She used kind of a dry brush effect to add texture to objects or a wispiness to clouds.
Oh, this pop-up ghost.
Yeah, he's gruesome.
Yeah.
And I do add more detail to this face while trying to keep him simple.
Okay.
And we'll see how that turns out in just a bit, but for now, let's visit with another famous Disney ghost.
Oh, the headless horseman.
Yep.
One of my favorites. And Mary Blair did a bunch of concept art for Ichabod and Mr. Toad.
Yeah, and I love it. I'm planning on doing a bit more dry brushing in this piece, so I'm picking out some flat brushes that I think might help. But I'm also not as confident as Mary Blair was in painting foreground characters initially in gouache right on top of a finished background.
Right.
So I'm trying a different technique on this one and using a pencil sketch as a guide.
So, do you brush around the figure?
More or less. I tried to. But it was kind of hard to get those sweeping clouds streaking all the way across the sky when I had to keep stopping to avoid painting over the figure.
And because you're not diluting it with a lot of water, the gouache would have been completely opaque and covered the pencils?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So I just had to take my time and be careful. In the end, the sky looked, I guess, passable.
Oh, yeah.
And the dry-brushed clouds had that wispy feel I was going for. I did end up covering a little of my pencil work, but again, this was a simple design. That was my goal, so it wasn't too hard to find the silhouette after the fact. I picked a round brush so that I could have a little more control, and I started painting in the horseman and his horse.
That black really jumps out at you.
Oh yeah.
You know what I like about these pieces is after they dry, they're so amazingly matte. No shine, but really vivid color too.
Yeah, I like that the finish really flattens out, but that the colors still look so pure and vibrant.
It's nice.
Another benefit with gouache is that you can work from dark to light.
Okay.
You can paint bright colors over dark, which isn't really an option with watercolor. You saw that with the headstone in the last piece.
Yeah.
And now with this jack-o'-lantern flame glowing on a dark Halloween night. Again, I'm going to show you the finished piece in just a little bit, but it's time for my final ghost, and I can't think of a more suitable spook to fill that spot.
The hatbox ghost. Of course.
Of course. And with this one, again, I tried a different technique to get the drawing down on paper.
Okay, well, there's no pencil sketch. And it looks like you're going right in with a very dark background, so
Yeah.
I'm guessing you have a plan.
I guess I have a plan.
Okay.
I painted what I thought would look like the dark corner of an attic room.
Which is where the hatbox ghost hangs out in the Haunted Mansion.
Yeah, and again, I tried to use dry brush technique to add texture and wood grain to the planks. Then I did a sketch of the hatbox ghost and used white transfer paper to get the idea of the drawing down onto the dark background.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
He kind of looks like a ghost already. So then you just use that as a guide for the gouache.
Yeah, and my plan was to lay down the colors from dark to light again. I knew I'd be covering the line work with the gouache.
Because it's opaque.
Yeah, so I used the darker colors to set up a framework to follow.
Okay.
Once I had the darks of the eye sockets and the mouth in, I could put down some slightly lighter colors on the cheeks, the tongue, the brow line, and then I just kept building it up until I got to the lightest colors.
And there it is again. Light colors over dark.
Yeah, and I'm finding that's one of my favorite things about gouache is that it helps to give the illusion of luminance,
Okay.
which works great if you're painting ghosts. And I guess it's about time for all the ghosts to materialize.
Oh, great. Let's take a look. I really love the way these look. They have a different feel than your other stuff.
They're not too terrible.
Yeah.
I'm no Mary Blair, but for my first time with gouache, I'm happy with these.
And I think your color choices gave me that vintage Disney vibe you were going for.
Yeah, and I think that the limited palette I used makes them a pretty cohesive set.
Oh, yeah.
I had a lot of fun. I really want to try gouache again sometime soon.
Good.
All right, now we've done a lot of videos where we experiment with mediums that we know very little about.
And plenty of videos where we make something spooky.
Yeah, so if you liked this video, you'll probably enjoy a lot of our stuff, but here's a link to one we think you'll like just to get you started. Thanks for watching.